All right, we're live. All right, good morning, everyone. House Government Operations Military Affairs, Thursday, April 30th. Shortly after 9:30 a.m., we are picking up a little bit more testimony on S323, an act relating to miscellaneous agricultural subjects. And we have the executive director and co-founder of the Vermont Growers Association and a frequent flyer in our committee joining us today to share some insight, thoughts, and perspective on this bill that we are only reviewing sections on and do not have possession, but are doing diligent focus towards. Jeffrey, how are you?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, committee. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Terrific. Thanks for the invitation. I know that you all have been very busy and on issues other than hemp and cannabis. So want to recognize that. Thank you for your work and thank you for making time this morning for me and others to hear more on this issue. I'll be brief. Nick, would it be possible to share my screen?
Yeah.
Sorry for that last minute request. Okay, thank you. Let's see. I think this is the right one.
Yeah.
All right. Can you all see my screen? Should be some
Yes.
CBD products. Okay, great. Thanks so much. Sorry about that. Okay. For the record, Jeffrey Pizzatello. I am the co-founder and executive director of Vermont Growers Association. We are a 501c4 trade association for the adult use cannabis space. Though we have growers in our name, we are proud that our dues paying members represent the entire supply chain for the adult use market. So retailers, wholesalers, manufacturers, labs, and ancillary businesses that support the industry, such as banks and insurance companies. I will share more about myself and our organization later when we're talking about adult use this afternoon with surrounding 278. But for right now, I want to focus my attention on hemp and the letter that we sent this committee a couple days ago. So I want to start by sharing a little bit about why Vermont Growers Association is weighing into this issue and how we're doing so. And then I'll open it up to the committee for discussion and any questions.
Yep.
Sorry, Chair.
Hold on, I want to, yes, Representative Morgan.
Yeah. Hey, Jeffrey, Michael Morgan here. Hey, just a couple of us were talking about before we started this morning. And so you got to pardon some of my ignorance. This world is a different world to me and trying to understand it better. What is the real layman's differentiation, hemp versus not hemp in the cannabis world? What's your quick, I'd just like to hear somebody that's subject matter expert in your world, what your words are on that. And just to give me I believe I understand it, but I'd like to hear it from what your layman's term definition would be.
I appreciate that question, Representative. And let me preface by saying, y'all have heard some really tremendous and extensive testimony on this issue. It can often be weighted down by acronyms, molecular discussion, technical discussion,
Yes.
and that's important. I'm gonna try to present more plain text testimony this morning, and I'll start by answering your question.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. So in the simplest terms, hemp is the same plant as cannabis, but what distinguishes it largely are the compounds that the plant itself produces that distinguishes it from intoxicating and non-intoxicating. And so how do we arrive at that distinction between intoxicating and non-intoxicating? Well, in the 2018 Farm Bill, the USDA determined something called a THC threshold. That THC threshold is the metric to determine that difference between those two plants. That THC threshold is 0.3% of dry weight mass of the plant, if that was clear enough.
Yes.
Then from there, hemp can be forked into sort of different uses. So there are what's considered sort of industrial or secondary uses. You may have heard of things like hempcrete, using hemp for industrial purposes to make paper, to fabricate, say, components in a car. These things are a reality, and hemp has that possibility. There's also the more consumption or, and this when it gets into the weeds a little bit, cannabinoid centered products. And that word cannabinoid simply infers for consumption, whether for, say, you've heard of dog biscuits for our loving pets, or CBD oils for, say, topicals or for ingestive purposes. So that is, in its plainest terms, how we would sort of look through the lens of hemp in relation to cannabis.
Sure. No, I appreciate it. I think that I didn't mean to cut your discussion off earlier. I just thought it'd be good to help set the stage on the differentiate, at least for me, and I hope it helps others.
No, that's
Thank you.
tremendous.
Appreciate it.
And adding to that, something that I think that we're all familiar with, and it doesn't matter what sector it is, but here in Vermont, our farmers and our agricultural products don't necessarily compete at economies of scale. We excel, we thrive when we innovate and produce high quality, small craft products. So farming and agricultural production at a smaller scale, but done so more meaningfully and at a much higher quality tier for the end user, for the customer to purchase. So what that means for hemp is you all heard from, I believe, some local stakeholders, be it Sam Bellavance at Sunset Lake and others. Those businesses are considered small scale nationally, but fairly large scale within the state. And I think what we would like to bring to the conversation, perhaps this morning, is the coalition of small hemp farmers and product makers that we organized over the past couple weeks around this issue, the hemp market proposals in Bill S323. Those small hemp farmers and producers constitute really small businesses. These are often sole proprietors. These are more cottage industry sort of leaning producers. They often have one employee or maybe two employees max. And we think it's important for you to understand that there are more of those, hundreds of those small farmers and producers in the state than there are employees that those larger firms retain. And we think that's important to at least contextualize the full scope of the landscape of what's here in Vermont when it comes to the hemp industry. So germane to this discussion, and I'm going to speak a bit about why Vermont Growers Association, an adult use organization, is weighing in here. We advocate and support the adult use industry. We respect hemp farmers and producers, but I just want to be clear, we don't serve or represent them. But what we're doing today is we do weigh into issues of the hemp market, and this is sort of when it gets into the weeds a little bit, the hemp market and its parity and relationship to the adult use market. And that's when it comes back to the sort of cannabinoid products, the products intended for ingestion. And the extent of our involvement is to make sure that the hemp market is not extracting or outcompeting or causing harm to the adult use market. They can coexist together. And so that is our job. And that really amounts to things like making sure hemp-derived Delta-9, or the intoxicating part of the cannabis plant, does not in an outsized manner compete in an unfair way with the small licensed cannabis producers in the state. That can happen. We see that play out in other states. That has not occurred in the state. So far, policymakers in the state, including you all in the State House and the CCB, have done a pretty outstanding job ensuring parity between these two markets. And so that is largely the extent of involvement historically that my organization, VGA, has had in the hemp space. Earlier this year, senators asked us to join the hemp conversation, the broader hemp market discussion. And through that, we didn't want to operate sort of in a vacuum, so we started reaching out to local hemp farmers and producers. Also, sort of understanding committee that there is no sort of formal body right now, no organization for these small farms and businesses in the hemp space. And so we sort of just stepped in and began doing that. And really, this letter and the recommendations, and so far any of the advocacy efforts put forward around 323 from VGA or our coalition partners, Rural Vermont or NOFA Vermont, largely represent just the voices of those small 1 or 2 employee hemp farm and hemp producers across the state. And so that's really what I see as my role here in this committee with you today. Um, Through that, those hemp farmers and producers have arrived at 3 clear recommendations for the bill. And without sort of getting into them, I think maybe keeping it in plain text terms, if I had to summarize this letter, and I urge you to bring it up before you, and if you don't, please, I will email Nick and ensure that you guys have it. Oh,
No,
yeah.
we got it posted on our page now, and I do have a hand from Representative Hingo.
Thank you very much. I just want to make sure your letter addresses draft 1.1, but we're now on draft 4.1. Have you seen the latest draft?
We have not.
Okay, I'm not sure if the latest draft addresses any of the concerns you have or recommendations that you're making. So I apologize that I have not compared the two because I just noticed that you're working off draft 1.1.
Thank you for noticing that. And perhaps the most effective
Welcome.
use of time right now would be to convey the concerns and the parameters that are sort of extracted from this letter that is pertaining to version 1.1 to make sure that you guys are hearing those concerns to ensure that perhaps the latest version is meeting or at least satisfying some of those concerns. And they are brief.
Thank you.
So in a nutshell, everybody, what these small hemp farmers and producers are asking is, simply put, they're currently operating in a manner that is, they feel, satisfying public safety and public health concerns. They are producing a high quality product. But by the way, I will bring up some of the producers and stakeholders who tried to speak before this committee, but I think scheduling concerns just did not make it possible with a short amount of time. So this is Primal Botanicals. Individual's name is Annika. And you can see here, these are some of the products that she produces. Here's another small Vermont producer as well, Z Botanicals Apothecary. And you can see again some of the products that she makes for ingestive purposes. And so what these small craft hemp farmers and producers are doing is they're purchasing hemp flower from Vermont farmers that grow hemp. They're then taking that hemp flower and steeping it in MCT or like a coconut oil or a basic, real simple carrier. And then from there, they're taking that extract, that full spectrum extract, and they're making products with it. These small producers typically have, I'm going to say 10 to maybe 30, 40 products in their product line. So it's not very broad, not very large of a product line. So pretty small. They often have other jobs and they're just simply interested in maintaining, first of all, their livelihood. And then second of all, the integrity of their product. Vermonters, by and large, in this sector are not interested in experimenting with the sort of designer molecular hemp products that you see in other states that are sort of potentially compromising of public health. That's important because that speaks to the reputation of Vermont as a state. What they are interested in is bringing forward what they consider full spectrum plant medicine or products that speak for therapeutic purposes for human and plant health and pet health. And so what they're doing is they're creating an extract in their kitchens, they're making these products and they're selling them through their website. And simply put, they're asking that Vermont legislators, if you're considering bringing this oversight this market back into the state, which they don't oppose. They are simply asking that please do so in a manner that does not introduce any new financial or regulatory burdens because their margins are so thin. This is a second or a third job, as I said a moment ago, for most of them. And so that is really the sentiment here is if the intention is to protect these small producers, let's make sure that when we bring them back into the state, that they are in fact protected and not faced with greater burdens or uncertainty than they're currently faced right now. And I'll stop there.
All right, questions. Rep. Hanigo.
Just a technical question on your first set of recommendations about the tier system. What are COAs?
Good question. That acronym stands for Certificate of Analysis, and that is a document that you get from a lab, a testing lab, that gives you that lists the results or the criteria of the representation of what's in the test results.
So with the like granular suggestions for this bill, Jeffrey, we are trying to address, we're really focusing right now on the registration language and trying to figure out what we want to do with that based on testimony we've taken from a couple of folks. So if you want to take a peek at the current version of the bill this morning, 4.1.
Okay.
And if you have any insight to offer on that for feedback, later in the day, when you come back after the floor, feel free. Because we are trying to hone that in a bit. Yes, Rep. Go.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking at your second recommendation and just wondering how by putting this in Vermont statute, we can control the federal threshold. What if they decide to change it and make it, for instance, like less, like 0.2, for instance? How would this help ensure stability in what you're able to do with your products? Because if the feds, for whatever reason, were to drop that threshold, this would no longer be possible in Vermont to sell a 0.3 as hemp. You see where I'm going with that?
I do. And we have thought about that, Representative. That's a great question. Thank you. So my response to you would be correct. And I'm sure you've heard in previous testimony, most of these small hemp producers, including some of the larger ones such as Sunset Lake, they really depend on interstate commerce at this moment in time. A majority, I believe, of the sales, even for some of these smaller manufacturers that we just looked at, they perform a lot of their sales online through their website in a well-regulated manner. Should November arrive and no change in DC, and that THC threshold that we talked about earlier from the 2018 Farm Bill were to change, that it seems like you all are now familiar with, what that would then do would then prevent the products that are currently at the 0.3% federal standard from being sold across state lines. And so what we see and what we're asking for, I should say what small hemp farmers and manufacturers are asking for in this language is to ensure that they continue to operate at that same threshold within the state, which we believe is possible through the CCB, not so different from, say, cannabis products right now that don't benefit from interstate commerce. So it would sort of fall in that category of sort of like a low THC hemp product. And I want to be clear here. At Vermont Growers Association, we are not interested, and the state has not done so far, allow hemp-derived intoxicating products to enter the market. So we're not asking for that. But what this language does ask is that the state hold to that 0.3% THC threshold, which is current federal standard, to not disrupt the product formulation of these small producers that we just looked at a moment ago. That would likely have them reassess whether or not they're viable anymore. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think what you're asking for is to be able to continue in-state sales at this current threshold, even if the feds were to drop the threshold and not allow for outside of the state sales.
Correct. Exactly. In fact, this language, this recommendation goes a little bit further, as you can see, and that it recommends you all consider a sort of trigger mechanism such that because there's so much uncertainty in Washington, D.C., around hemp and other issues as well. We don't know. We do not know. No one knows what's going to happen come November or anytime before then. And so what this trigger mechanism says is, should the THC threshold go above 0.3% at the federal level to protect our hemp market and our adult use market, at that point in time, we should reassess our own threshold here in this state. Because we may not want, for instance, those higher thresholds if it were to go in that direction. And that just speaks to the uncertainty that we see in DC again.
All right. Well, council just arrived for the next order of business. Any other questions for Jeffrey? We will be seeing him again this afternoon to speak to the adult use market bill. But we will have him here if we want to bounce any other thoughts, the sessions of this. So, any questions for this moment in time? No. All right, Jeffrey, as always, thank you for the time. And if you want to scan that 4.1, it's on our committee page and just see kind of how that might have evolved in your perspective on it. Feel free to check that out. And yeah, we'll see what we can figure out with these sections while we're taking a look at them.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Committee. And I'll see you guys later this afternoon.
All right. Thank you. All right. 5 minutes ahead of schedule. Look, Mr. Devlin, good morning, sir. We are now shifting into taking a look at the Senate proposal of amendment, walkthrough, and the bill is on the floor today. H762, an act relating to county and regional government study committee.
Morning, committee members. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Tim Devlin, Legislative Counsel. What's come over from the Senate is a relatively short amendment to the bill. And just to refresh everybody's memory, this is the bill that is essentially extending the County and Regional Government Study Committee. It left this committee, let's see, it was going to extend the report back to December 15th, 2026, and then extend the sunset of that committee till July 1st, 2028. And what we have here from the Senate Government Operations Committee is essentially taking that report, instead of extending it to December 15th, 2026, extending it to November 1st, 2027. So providing the committee that much more time to perform its work. The only other thing it did was it caught additional, and then the committee sunset date has also been adjusted so that instead of, this committee had it expiring essentially on July 1st, 2028, it would expire November 2nd, 2027, the day after it would be submitting its report.
Grab and go.
Yeah, Tim, sorry, I don't have it up right this second. I'm finding it,
Here.
but is that shortening it 1 year, the existence of the committee? Yeah.
So the report will be pushed back. Let's see, this committee had it on December 2026. This would push it back to November 2027, so approximately a year more. The committee's duration overall, this committee had it expiring or sunsetting in July 2028. The Senate would have it expire in November 2027. So the report period would be longer, but the life of the committee would be shorter.
Yeah, that was what I was asking.
Sorry. I used my words incorrectly. Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay, Rep. Waters on.
I'm wondering, and I know maybe you can't speak to the motivations of the Senate committee, but I'm wondering if it's because that's during that January to July period, most of it is during the legislative session, so the committee wouldn't be meeting anyway. Do you think that's part of it? I don't know if this is, but so it seems like it's not really shortening their actual meeting times, right?
Right. The committee, after submitting its report, could continue to be, I suppose, if wanted, but really their directive has been fulfilled.
Hmm.
That's the comment I have with that. The other change we have is it's a technical change where they removed one additional reference to there being two co-chairs. Remember, it's being transitioned from two co-chairs to one chair. There was actually another reference to that buried in the meeting section, so it's just pulling.
Yeah, I was wondering what that strike was. I was like, didn't we do that? Oh, so it was redundant language that we only struck one instance of? Thank you.
Here's
Okay.
Twice in the underlying bill. This committee struck one of them, Senate Gov struck the other one.
Okay.
Formity. That's it.
All right, team. Any questions for council? Rep. Hango.
Did you hear any of the discussion as the reporter of the bill, what their reasoning was? Or wasn't for any of that?
I was only told that they were making minor changes all the time.
And you're
I'm
having
content.
served as chair of it, you're okay with that?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, and also Senator Callamore is also the co-chair.
Mhm.
So he and I served those roles for the same duration of time. We have the same intentions with the life of this thing, so I trust his judgment.
Great. Thanks.
All right. Thoughts, comments, discussion? Anything for today? All right, barring any further discussion, I guess we can straw poll this. I will call for favorable thumbs.
Do we have to straw poll or is it a real vote? I'm
It's a
sorry
real
for
vote. It's a straw.
interrupting.
Don't know. Parliamentary procedure, sorry.
To
Have possession.
us. But do we?
No, it's straw, right?
I don't know.
This is my issue with straw polls.
Yeah, I feel like it's our bill, so
Do we vote on this?
who has possession if we don't? Right.
So we accept the proposal.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure that's a strong. Sorry.
But who, do you want me to run up and ask?
Time out.
You have to present, who's going to present the amendment?
Reporter of the bill.
So wouldn't
submitting.
you want to say that a vote of blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, I know, but we're figuring out if we have to do a formal
What
vote.
did you
straw
ask to do
poll.
a formal vote and then we're covered?
We're figuring that out right now.
I'm gonna run and ask.
All right, I'm gonna take us offline until Rep. Waters Evans returns.
You think it's hard. The difference is nothing. It's the procedure.
Wait.
What's the name of what's the number of the bill?
762. County governance, thank you.